I never imagined that the person I loved most would be the one to hurt me the most. When Sarah and I first met in college, everything seemed so perfect. We clicked immediately, two people with the same sense of humor, the same interests, and the same vision for the future. We both had dreams, goals, and a clear path forward. We'd been together for over 10 years now, married for 8. And for most of that time, it felt like we could handle anything life threw at us. I ran a small coffee shop downtown that had become a staple for locals. My customers knew my name and I knew theirs. It wasn't a massive business, but it was mine and it was enough. Sarah, on the other hand, was a successful interior designer. She worked on high-end projects, often traveling around the state to meet clients. Her career had really taken off in the last few years, which meant she was away from home more often. At first I was proud of her. She was doing well and I supported her just like she supported me. But as her career grew, so did the distance between us, not just physically but emotionally. It started small, little things I brushed off at first. She began working longer hours, taking on more projects, and staying out late with clients or coworkers. I didn't think much of it. I understood that her work was important to her. But then it started to become a routine. Sarah would go out for a quick dinner with a client and wouldn't get home until after midnight. Sometimes she wouldn't answer my calls or texts, and when she did, it felt like she was brushing me off. One evening, I asked her if everything was okay, if she was happy. I was just trying to check in. She smiled and kissed me, brushing off my concerns, saying, "You're just being overprotective. It's just work, John. I'll be fine." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to explain my worries to her. "Sarah, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just, it's late and you're alone. What if something happens?" She laughed, a sound that seemed almost rehearsed, like she had heard this before and had prepared her response. "John, you have to trust me. I'm a grown woman. I don't need to check in with you every time I leave the house. I'm not a child." Her words stung. She always made it seem like my concern was a flaw, a weakness. But I was just trying to protect her. I wanted to know she was safe. I wanted to know she cared about keeping me in the loop. But no matter how I approached it, she would dismiss me with a smile and a quick reassurance. As the weeks went by, it became harder to ignore the growing distance between us. The late nights became more frequent, and the arguments about her whereabouts more heated. I wasn't trying to control her. I was just trying to protect what we had. But it seemed like she didn't want to be held down. It was as if she resented my concern. And then one night it all came to a head. She had gone out again, riding her bike late at night. This time I couldn't just sit at home and wait. I texted her asking where she was, but the response was brief, just a quick, "I'm good. Love you. Art." Nothing more. It was strange. She always responded with more detail, especially when she knew I was worried. This time there was nothing. A pit formed in my stomach. I didn't like how this felt. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't want to come across as controlling. But I couldn't help myself. I texted her again saying, "I'm going to be home for the night. What are you up to?" No response. I followed up with, "I really dislike when you don't tell me where you are, especially late at night. Please just check in with me." This time I didn't get a quick reply. Instead, after a few more texts, I got a terse, "I'm trying to drive my damn bike, John. You're blowing up my phone. It's uncalled for." I was hurt. I hadn't meant to make her feel suffocated. I just wanted to feel like I mattered. I wanted her to care enough to reassure me that everything was okay. But instead of calming my fears, she responded with anger, blaming me for being needy and insecure. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't trying to control her. I just wanted to know she was safe. But no matter how I explained it, it seemed like she just didn't get it. She didn't understand why I cared. It wasn't just about the bike rides anymore. It wasn't just about her staying out late and not telling me where she was. It was about the way she dismissed me, the way she seemed to pull away from everything we had built. That night, something in me snapped. I couldn't stay home and wonder if she was telling the truth. I had to know. I got in my car and drove to her favorite late-night bar, the one she often visited when she was out riding. I had an eerie feeling in the pit of my stomach, but I ignored it, convincing myself it was just my overactive imagination. When I walked into the bar, I spotted her right away. Sarah was sitting at the bar, laughing with a man I didn't recognize. My heart sank. Her bike was parked outside, and when I walked past it, I noticed that the exhaust was cold. It had only been minutes since she'd texted me that she was on her bike. There was no way the exhaust could have cooled down that quickly. I didn't confront her right away. I couldn't. But the betrayal I felt in that moment was like a weight in my chest. I walked out without saying anything, but as I did, I sent her a message, "I know where you are." I wanted to hear the truth from her. I needed it even though I was scared of what it might mean. But as soon as she responded, I knew she wasn't going to give it to me. We argued. She made excuses, and even though I wanted to believe her, I couldn't anymore. That night marked the beginning of the end for us. Something had shifted inside of me. I could feel it. The trust one had in her was gone, and I didn't know how to get it back. The lies, the distance, the anger, it had all built up to this moment, and now I was left to figure out what to do with it. The problem wasn't just that she had lied to me. It was that, somehow, she had managed to make me feel like the one in the wrong. The days after that night were a blur. I spent most of my time at the coffee shop, pretending to work but really just lost in my own thoughts. Every time I tried to focus, my mind would drift back to that bar. The image of Sarah sitting there with that man, laughing and completely unaware that I was watching, kept replaying in my head. I couldn't understand why she would lie to me. Why she would go to such lengths to keep things from me when, for so many years, we had shared everything. When I got home that night, Sarah wasn't there. She had texted me earlier saying she was staying late with a client. I didn't respond right away, but my mind was racing. I couldn't let it go. Every little thing she'd said and done started to feel like a lie. The late nights, the phone calls that always seemed just a little too brief, the way she'd get defensive every time I asked about her whereabouts, it was all starting to add up, and none of it was adding up in her favor. She came home around 2 a.m. that night, just like she had countless times before. But this time something was different. There was a coldness between us, an unspoken tension that hung in the air. I had to say something. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She froze at the door, her hands still on the knob. Her eyes narrowed, and I could tell she was bracing for whatever was coming. She didn't say anything at first, but the silence between us felt suffocating. Finally she spoke. "What now, John? I know you weren't on your bike tonight. I saw you at the bar." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her face immediately went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might say something to explain herself. But instead she just shook her head. "John, I don't know what you think you saw, but don't lie to me, Sarah. I saw you there. With him." "Why?" I felt my voice rise, but I couldn't help it. I needed to know why she had done this, why she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. She stepped back, putting her hands up in a defensive gesture. "John, I'm not cheating on you. It's not what you think. He's just a friend. A client. Don't give me that." I shot back. "If he's just a friend, why did you lie to me? Why did you text me like everything was fine when you were clearly somewhere else? Why did you tell me you were on your bike when you were sitting at a bar with him?" She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes avoiding mine. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but she wasn't ready to admit it. Instead, she crossed her arms over her chest, her posture defensive. "You don't trust me, John. This is about you, not me. I'm not the one with the problem here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she turn this on me? I was the one who had been lied to. I was the one who had been kept in the dark. And yet, somehow she was making it sound like I was the bad guy for wanting the truth. "I'm not the one who's lying, Sarah," I said, my voice breaking. "You don't even see it, do you? Every time you lie, you just push me further away. You don't even care about what we've built. You don't care about what I need." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't let her. "No, Sarah. I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I don't know what happened to us, but I can't keep pretending like everything's fine when it's not. I don't know how to trust you anymore." I turned away, walking toward the bedroom, but she didn't follow me. For the first time in months, I felt like I had to put myself first. I had to protect my heart from the person who had once been my whole world. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts were tangled in a mess of confusion, anger, and heartbreak. I couldn't understand how Sarah could treat me like this. How could she not see how much I cared? How could she continue to lie, knowing it was breaking me from the inside out? The next morning, Sarah was gone when I woke up. Her side of the bed was empty, and there was no note, no message. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Something told me that I wasn't going to like what came next. Hours later, I got a text. "We need to talk. Can you meet me at the office?" I didn't want to meet her. I didn't want to give her another chance to lie to me. But I couldn't ignore her either. I had to know the truth. I had to hear it from her, no matter how much it hurt. When I arrived at her office, Sarah was sitting behind her desk, looking more distant than ever. She didn't stand up when I walked in, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't smile at me. "John, she started, but I cut her off before she could say anything else. "I know, Sarah. I know everything. I said, my voice low and steady. I saw the text. I heard the phone call. I know you're seeing someone else. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. But instead of coming clean, she quickly composed herself. It's not what you think. I didn't want to hurt you, John. I thought I could keep it all separate. Separate? I repeated. You can't keep something like that separate, Sarah. You've been lying to me for months. And for what? To protect your secret life? To keep me in the dark while you do whatever you want? Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she looked at me with an almost cold resignation. I didn't want to hurt you. But I wasn't happy. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way I stopped being happy with us. And I thought I could fix it without telling you the truth. I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. It wasn't just the affair that hurt, it was the fact that she hadn't had the decency to be honest with me. I can't do this anymore, Sarah, I said, standing up. I'm done. As I left her office, I felt like I was walking away from a lifetime. A life that I thought was real but was just a facade all along. And as I stepped out into the street, I realized I had no idea where to go next. But one thing was certain, I couldn't keep living in a lie. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. I found myself lost in the emptiness of the apartment that I had once shared with Sarah. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in on me, reminding me of the life we had built together, the memories that now seemed tainted. I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was numbness, an overwhelming, suffocating numbness. Sarah had tried to contact me several times after our conversation at her office. Texts, calls, every method she could think of to reach me. But I didn't respond. How could I? I had given her so many chances to come clean, and each time she had lied to me, dismissed my concerns, or blamed me for being too insecure. This was different. I had to be done. I couldn't keep investing in someone who wasn't honest with me. The first few nights after I walked out of her office, I spent alone at the coffee shop. The place felt more like home than my apartment did. I'd keep myself busy refilling the coffee pots and wiping down the counters, pretending to focus on work. I didn't want to think about Sarah, but every corner of the shop reminded me of her. The way she would smile when she walked in for her morning coffee, the way she'd make small talk with the regulars, the sound of her laughter echoing through the shop. It was all slipping through my fingers like sand. Then came the phone call. It was late one evening and I was preparing to close up the shop when I saw Sarah's name on the caller ID. My stomach twisted, but I knew I had to answer. Maybe it was the closure I needed, the chance to hear her admit her mistakes. Or maybe, just maybe, I still wanted to hear her say she was sorry. Hello? I answered, my voice guarded. John, please, can we talk? Sarah's voice sounded strained, almost desperate. I took a deep breath, trying to control the rush of emotions that flooded my chest. What is there to talk about, Sarah? You've lied to me for months. You've been seeing someone else behind my back. How am I supposed to even look at you after everything that's happened? I know, John, she said softly. And I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me. But please let me explain. I stayed silent for a moment, my fingers gripping the edge of the counter. Every part of me wanted to hang up, to walk away from the situation completely, but something inside of me needed to hear her side. Maybe it was some last shred of hope, some small part of me that still believed in the woman I had married. I've been confused, she continued. I don't know how things got this way. I thought I was just growing. I was trying to make something of myself and I didn't see how it was affecting you. I didn't realize that I was pushing you away. Her words didn't register right away. She sounded sincere, but I wasn't sure if I could trust her anymore. How many times had I heard her apologize only to have it mean nothing in the end? How many times had I let her off the hook? You don't get it, Sarah, I said, my voice cracking. It wasn't just about you working late. It wasn't about your career or your clients. It was the lies. The constant lies, the secrets. You told me that we were a team, but you've been doing this all on your own. I know, she whispered. I don't expect you to understand. But please, just give me a chance to explain. I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the cool surface of the counter. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, waiting for me to say something, anything. But I wasn't sure what I could say anymore. I can't do this, Sarah. I can't keep pretending like everything's fine when it's not, I finally said, my words heavy with finality. I thought I knew you. I thought you knew me. But now I'm not sure who you are anymore. And I'm not sure who I am when I'm with you. There was a long silence. I could feel her on the other end, maybe trying to come up with something to say that would change my mind, but it was too late. The trust was gone. The hurt had settled too deep, and no amount of words could undo the damage. "I think it's time we move on," I said, my voice resolute. She didn't argue. She didn't fight me. Instead, I heard her take a deep breath before she said, "Okay. I understand." And just like that, the conversation ended. The next few days were filled with paperwork and legalities. I'd never imagined I'd be in this situation, dividing up things that were once shared. The apartment, the bills, the furniture. It all seemed so final. So cold. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I used to be. I was just exhausted. As the days went by, Sarah's presence slowly faded from my life, but the emptiness lingered. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. I didn't know who I was without her. For years we had been a part of each other's lives. We had shared our dreams, our fears, our future. And now it was all gone. The coffee shop became my refuge. But even there, I felt the weight of her absence. It was like I was living in a ghost of the life we once had. I poured myself into work, keeping busy, hoping that time would heal the wounds. But every now and then, I'd catch myself wondering if I had made the right choice. Could I have forgiven her? Should I have tried harder to make it work? But then I would remember the lies. The constant betrayal. The feeling of being alone even when she was right next to me. I had to let go. And as much as it hurt, I knew it was the only way forward. I was done holding on to something that was already slipping through my fingers. Now it was time to find myself again. It had been a few weeks since Sarah and I had decided to part ways. The initial pain was still fresh, but I was slowly beginning to realize that life was moving forward, whether I was ready for it or not. The shop was busier than usual, a welcome distraction, but even there the absence of Sarah's presence hung over everything. Her laughter, her warmth, the way she would sit at the corner table, sipping her coffee while she worked on her designs. It felt like a lifetime ago. I spent my days behind the counter, focusing on my regular customers, the ones who came in every morning without fail. They asked how I was doing, offered their sympathy, but it always felt like they didn't really understand. How could they? No one could know what it felt like to see the person you trusted the most in the world turn into a stranger before your eyes. No one could know what it was like to watch your marriage crumble and feel helpless to stop it. One evening, as the sun began to set and the warm California breeze filtered through the open door, a familiar face walked in. It was Mike, one of the baristas I'd worked with for years and someone I considered a friend. He looked at me with sympathy, his eyes softening when he saw the exhaustion in my face. "Hey man, you good?" he asked, leaning on the counter as he looked around the empty shop. The calmness of the evening made it feel even more lonely, like I was stuck in a moment that was never going to end. "Yeah," I lied, plastering a weak smile on my face. "Just trying to keep busy." Mike didn't buy it. He could always read me like a book, even when I tried to hide my feelings. He raised an eyebrow, the kind of look that said he wasn't letting me off the hook. "You sure about that? You don't look good, John. You look, I don't know, broken." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I hated how easily he could see right through me, but part of me was grateful for it. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could say something, anything, without being judged. "I don't know what to do anymore, Mike," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's like everything I thought I knew about myself, about my life, is just gone. I thought Sarah and I were happy. I thought we were a team. But now, I can't even remember when it all started falling apart." Mike nodded, pulling a chair from one of the nearby tables and sitting down beside me. He wasn't one to rush in with advice, but I could tell he was waiting for me to say what I needed to. So I did. "I trusted her, Mike. I loved her. And she lied to me. Over and over again. I didn't even see it. I didn't know. I didn't know she had already checked out. And now it feels like I don't know who I am anymore. I've been so wrapped up in fixing things and trying to save the marriage, that I didn't stop to think about what I needed. And now, it's too late." Mike was quiet for a moment. I could tell he was thinking, carefully choosing his words before speaking. He looked at me with understanding, like he had been there himself, even though I had never heard him mention anything about his own past. "You can't change the past, man," he finally said. "You can't make her take back the lies. You can't undo the hurt. But you can move forward. You have to. The thing is, you've spent so much time worrying about Sarah and your marriage you forgot about you. You forgot about who you were before her. And I'm not saying you need to forget her, because you'll never forget her. But you have to start looking out for yourself." I felt a lump form in my throat. It was like I had been holding my breath this whole time, trying to hold everything together. But now, with Mike's words, I realized how much I had been suffocating, trying to keep a life that wasn't mine anymore. "I don't even know where to start," I muttered, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. Everything feels like it's in pieces. I don't know what comes next. Mike gave me a reassuring smile, the kind of smile that showed he knew exactly how lost I felt. Start with one thing, John. Just one. You don't have to figure out everything right now. You just have to take the first step. And I'll be here to help you through it. All you have to do is ask. I looked at him, the weight of his words sinking in. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel so alone. I had friends, I had people who cared. And maybe, just maybe, I could start rebuilding my life. Not for Sarah, not for anyone else, but for me. That night, after closing the shop, I went home and sat down on the couch, staring at the emptiness around me. Sarah's things were still in the apartment. Her clothes in the closet, her makeup on the bathroom counter. It felt like a ghost of her was still here, haunting me, but I knew it was time to take that first step. I couldn't keep living in the past, waiting for a change that wasn't going to come. I had to let go. I stood up and walked to the bedroom, gathering her things into a box. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I needed space to breathe. I needed to reclaim my life. Slowly, methodically, I packed up the remnants of our life together, the life I thought we had. As I finished, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't complete closure, but it was a start. A start to moving on, to healing, and to finding myself again. It wouldn't be easy, but I had to believe it was possible. After all, I wasn't just John the husband anymore. I was John the man who could stand on his own 2 feet. I had to be. And so, as I stood there in the quiet of my apartment, the box of Sarah's things in my hands, I made a promise to myself. I would start again. One step at a time. I was ready for the next chapter of my life. The weeks that followed felt like a constant battle between moving forward and holding on to the past. Every day, I woke up with the weight of the decision I had made, the choice to finally let go of Sarah, to stop waiting for something that would never come. The apartment was quieter now, more peaceful, but still felt strange without her. It was as if the silence echoed in the corners of the rooms, a reminder of the life we had once shared. But even in the midst of all that stillness, I began to feel a shift. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't some dramatic revelation or a sudden burst of clarity. It was more like the slow, steady unfolding of a new chapter that had been waiting for me to recognize it. I started to notice the little things, the morning sunlight filtering through the windows, the sound of birds outside, the way the coffee tasted when I made it just the way I liked. For the first time in months, I realized that I was paying attention to things I hadn't even noticed before. Things that used to be background noise to the rush of life were now front and center. At the coffee shop, I kept myself busy. I focused on the routine, brewing coffee, greeting customers, and putting up with the occasional complaints. But behind the counter, there was something else simmering. Something I hadn't expected. One afternoon, as I was cleaning up the counter, a familiar face walked in. It was Emma, a regular at the shop who I hadn't seen in weeks. She was a local artist, someone I'd always admired for her creativity and free-spirited nature. We'd exchanged pleasantries over the years, but nothing more than small talk. But today something was different. She looked at me with a kind of softness I hadn't seen before. "Hey John," she said, a small smile playing at her lips. "How have you been?" I wasn't expecting the question, not really. People had asked me that since the breakup, but the way she asked it felt different. Like she genuinely wanted to know, not just to make conversation. "I'm getting by," I replied, trying to keep the answer simple. I didn't want to get into everything with her, especially not here in the middle of the coffee shop. But Emma wasn't the type to let things go. She leaned against the counter, her eyes steady on mine. "It's been a while since I've seen you. You look different. A little more. I don't know, yourself?" Her words hit me harder than I expected. They were kind, but they also stung a little. How long had it been since I'd felt like myself? How long had I been lost in the chaos of my marriage, in the web of lies and betrayal, that I had forgotten who I was? "I've been figuring things out," I said, my voice quieter now. "It's been hard, but I think I'm starting to get there." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "You know, you don't have to do this alone. You've got people who care about you. I'm here if you need to talk. Or if you need a distraction." Her offer hung in the air for a moment. I hadn't really talked to anyone outside of the usual coffee shop banter. Not in any real, meaningful way. I had spent so much time trying to hold everything together on my own that I had forgotten how to lean on other people. But standing there looking at Emma, I realized she was right. I didn't have to do this alone. "Thanks, Emma," I said, offering her a small smile. "I might take you up on that. Soon." After she left, I stood there for a moment, reflecting on the conversation. I had been so consumed with the wreckage of my relationship with Sarah that I had forgotten there were still good people around me. People who saw me for who I was, not the broken husband, not the guy who had been lied to, but just me, John. The man behind the coffee counter. The next day I made a decision. I would start putting myself first. It wasn't going to be easy and it wasn't going to be perfect. But I had to do it. I had to start rebuilding my life, piece by piece. That evening after closing the shop, I took a walk through the park. It had been so long since I'd done something just for me, something that wasn't tied to Sarah or the coffee shop, or anything else that had been weighing me down. The park was quiet, the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. As I walked, I let my mind wander. I thought about all the things I'd lost, but I also thought about what I still had. My business, my health, the friends who had supported me, and the person I was beginning to rediscover, someone who didn't have to be defined by the pain of his past. I stopped by a bench near the pond where I sat down and closed my eyes. For the first time in months I felt calm. Not completely healed, not yet, but calm. And that was a start. A few days later, Emma stopped by the shop again. This time she didn't just come for coffee. She came to chat. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told me about her art, her travels, her dreams for the future. And slowly, as the conversation unfolded, I realized something I hadn't expected. I was enjoying myself. I was enjoying talking to someone who wasn't wrapped up in the baggage of my past. Felt light. As the days turned into weeks, I began to make more of an effort to connect with the people around me. I started going out for dinner with friends again, something I hadn't done since before Sarah and I's relationship had deteriorated. I went for walks in the park, spent more time in the coffee shop, and even took a day off to visit a local museum. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And the more I focused on myself, the more I realized that maybe this was what I needed all along. Not to fix someone else or hold on to the past, but to start fresh, to rediscover who I was before all the chaos. Maybe I hadn't been completely honest with myself about who I was in my marriage. Maybe I had let myself lose sight of what truly made me happy. But now I was finding it again. For the first time in a long time I felt hopeful. And that was a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. It had been a few months since Sarah and I had officially separated, and though I still had moments of doubt, there was a quiet confidence growing inside of me. It wasn't something that came all at once like flipping a switch, but more like the gradual warming of the sun on a chilly morning, small, subtle, but undeniable. I had learned that healing wasn't a straight line. Some days were better than others. Some days felt like I was moving forward and others felt like I was stuck in place. But the important thing was that I was moving even if it was slow. The coffee shop had become more than just a place of work. It had become my sanctuary, a space where I could think clearly and rediscover the joy of simple things. The regulars had noticed the change in me and they started complimenting me on my energy, how much lighter I seemed. It felt good to hear, but I also knew that the real change wasn't visible to anyone else. It was something I felt in the pit of my stomach, a sense of strength I hadn't known I had. One morning as I was preparing the morning brew, Emma walked into the shop again. It had become somewhat of a routine. She'd stop by after her morning jog, grab her coffee and sit down with her sketchbook. We'd exchange a few words, talk about art, life and sometimes nothing at all. There was no pressure, no expectations, just a quiet understanding that we enjoyed each other's company. Today was different though. Today she came in looking a little more serious than usual. "Hey John," she greeted me with a warm smile, but there was something behind her eyes that told me she had something to say. She took a seat at the counter, setting her bag down beside her. "Hey Emma, everything okay?" I asked, wiping my hands on the dish towel. She nodded, but her fingers drummed nervously on the tabletop. "I wanted to ask you something, if you're up for it." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Emma hesitated, then looked up at me. "I've been thinking about this for a while and I've been afraid to ask. But I think I need to know, how do you feel about moving forward? Not with Sarah but with you? Do you think you're ready for something more, or are you still too stuck in the past?" Her words caught me off guard and for a second I didn't know how to respond. Was I ready for something more? It had been so long since I'd thought about being with anyone else. But I wasn't the same person I had been when I was married. I had grown, I had changed, and somewhere deep down, I knew I wasn't as broken as I once thought. "Honestly?" I said after a beat, meeting her gaze. "I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. I don't want to rush anything, but I also don't want to stay stuck either. I've spent so much time healing and focusing on what went wrong with Sarah that I'm not sure what comes next." Emma smiled softly as if she understood. It's okay not to know. I just wanted to ask because I think you're someone worth getting to know better, John. And I think you've come a long way. But it's up to you, if you feel ready to explore something else. No pressure. I didn't know what to say. Her words were kind and I felt the warmth of them, but there was still a part of me that hesitated. Part of me that wondered if I was truly ready for anything beyond this quiet rebuilding phase I was going through. Could I give someone else a piece of my heart when I had just spent so long picking up the pieces? I appreciate that, Emma, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not sure what's next, but I know that I'm not the same guy I was a few months ago. I'm learning to live for myself again, and maybe that's enough for now. She nodded, her eyes kind and understanding. That's all anyone can do, John. Take it one step at a time. We sat in silence for a few moments, just letting the words hang in the air between us. I didn't feel any pressure to say more or to commit to anything. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be, right in the moment, just breathing, just existing. After a while, Emma finished her coffee and stood up, giving me a light smile. I'm glad you're in a better place, John. And whenever you're ready to talk more, I'm here. Thanks, Emma. I appreciate you, I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. As she left the shop, I watched her walk out the door, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the pang of regret or the weight of loss. I wasn't ready for something serious, not yet. But I had taken a step forward. A small one, but a step nonetheless. The next few weeks passed in a similar rhythm. I focused on the shop, spent time with my friends, and continued to explore the things I had let go of during my marriage. I took a painting class at the local art studio. I joined a hiking group with Mike. I even started volunteering at a community center helping kids learn to cook. It wasn't about filling the void left by Sarah. It was about filling the void that had been there long before her, the one that had been empty because I hadn't truly been living for myself. One evening, as I closed up the shop and began walking home, I realized something that made me stop in my tracks. I was actually enjoying my life. I wasn't constantly thinking about what went wrong or what could have been. I wasn't holding on to the past. I had let it go. And for the first time in months, I felt free. I took a deep breath and looked up at the stars. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. I was ready for whatever came next. The days turned into weeks, and I was slowly starting to feel like myself again. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about living, truly living. I was no longer the guy who had been lost in a painful marriage, trying to make sense of things that had never added up. I was John, the man who had made peace with his past and was now ready to embrace the future. There was still healing to do, but I was getting there. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of excitement for what lay ahead. One afternoon, while I was finishing up my usual round of cleaning and stocking, the doorbell jingled, and I looked up to see an unexpected face. It was Emma. She wasn't just coming in for a coffee today. She looked a little more purposeful, her eyes bright with something I couldn't quite place. "Hey," she greeted, stepping inside with a gentle smile. "Got a minute?" "Of course," I said, wiping my hands on a towel and leaning against the counter. I had gotten used to her dropping by, but today she seemed a bit more urgent. "What's up?" Emma hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I know you've been keeping busy with the shop and everything, but I wanted to extend an invitation to you. I'm hosting a small art show next week. Just some local artists, a few friends, and some of the people from around the neighborhood. It'd mean a lot to me if you could come." I blinked, surprised by the sudden invitation. I hadn't expected anything like this from her. It wasn't that I didn't want to support her. It was just that I hadn't really thought about stepping back into social circles, especially ones that involved mingling with strangers. "An art show, huh?" I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I don't know if I'm much of an art connoisseur." Emma laughed softly, her eyes twinkling. "You don't have to be. It's really more about supporting the community, and I know you've been through a lot lately. It might be good to get out, meet some new people, and just have a good time. No pressure." I could feel the hesitation in me, the part that was still afraid to open up to anything new. But then I realized, this was what I needed. This was my opportunity to keep moving forward, to start putting myself in situations where I could experience life again, without the baggage I had been carrying. I didn't have to go for any other reason than to be part of something positive, something that could help me grow. "All right, I'm in," I said, surprising even myself with how easy the words came out. "I'll be there." Emma's smile widened, and I could tell she was relieved. "Great. I'll send you the details. It's going to be a casual thing, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing you there." As she left, I stood behind the counter, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The idea of stepping into a social situation, meeting new people, and being part of something creative, it felt like a step into uncharted territory. But it also felt right. I was ready to be part of the world again, not as someone who had been shattered by the past, but as someone who was reclaiming his place in it. The night of the art show, I found myself standing outside the venue, staring at the building in front of me. It wasn't a large gallery or anything extravagant. It was a small, cozy art space with a warm, inviting glow spilling out from the windows. The sounds of laughter and conversation drifted out to me, and for a moment, I hesitated. What if I didn't belong here? What if I wasn't ready to face all these strangers? But then I remembered what Emma had said. This was about supporting the community, about stepping out of my comfort zone and embracing new experiences. And that's exactly what I needed to do. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the vibrant energy in the room. There were paintings on the walls, sculptures scattered throughout, and people mingling, enjoying wine and snacks. It was a celebration of creativity, of life, and it felt alive. The atmosphere was welcoming, not pretentious at all. I quickly spotted Emma near a table with a few of her pieces on display. She waved me over with a grin. "John, you made it," she said, her voice full of warmth. "Yeah, wouldn't miss it," I replied, smiling back. I took a moment to look around, feeling the sense of possibility in the air. The energy in the room was contagious, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. Emma led me around, introducing me to some of the artists and guests. I didn't know anyone, but everyone was kind, and I found myself laughing and enjoying the evening. I even bought a small painting from one of the local artists, something I had never done before. The act itself felt symbolic, like I was investing in myself, in my future, not just in art but in the act of starting fresh. As the evening wore on, I found myself talking more freely. Emma was by my side most of the time, but I didn't feel the weight of any expectations. She seemed to understand that I was still in the process of figuring things out. It was comfortable, easy, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Sarah or what had been lost. I was simply enjoying the moment. Later that night, as the event started winding down, Emma and I stepped outside onto the quiet street. The night air was cool, and the sounds of the city hummed in the background. "Well, what do you think?" she asked, looking at me with a hopeful smile. I think I'm glad I came," I said, surprising myself. I hadn't expected to feel this way, but something had shifted. I felt lighter, more open, like the world wasn't as intimidating as I had once thought. Emma's smile widened. "I'm glad you did. You've been through a lot, John. But you're stronger than you realize. You just needed a little push." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in. I wasn't the same person I had been just a few months ago. I was healing, yes, but I was also starting to thrive in my own way, moving beyond the shadows of the past. As I walked home that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The path ahead was still unclear, and there was no rush to figure it out. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. Whatever came next, I knew I had the strength to face it. The future was wide open. The days following the art show were filled with a quiet sense of contentment. I woke up each morning feeling like the air was just a little bit easier to breathe. It was like the weight I had carried for so long had finally begun to lift, and the world around me, though familiar, now seemed full of possibilities. I'd gotten used to the stillness of my life, the routine of the coffee shop, and the freedom that came with it. But now I found myself wondering what else was out there. Emma had continued to check in, keeping things light and easy. We had coffee here and there, talked about the art world, life, and the future. It wasn't anything serious, and yet it felt different from anything I had experienced in a while. There was no pressure. There was no rush to define anything. It was just comfortable. And that, in itself, was something new for me. One morning, as I was preparing for the day's rush at the coffee shop, I found myself reflecting on everything that had led me here. I thought about Sarah, of course, and how my life had been so wrapped up in her for so many years. I thought about the betrayal, the lies, and the slow, painful realization that I had been living in a relationship where my needs weren't being met, where trust had been broken, and where I had ignored my own sense of self for far too long. But now, with every passing day, I felt more like myself again. I wasn't just surviving the aftermath of a broken marriage, I was rebuilding step by step. And even though I wasn't ready for something serious with anyone, I was open to the possibility. I wasn't looking for love or companionship right now, but I wasn't shutting it out either. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my heart was healing, not just from the wounds Sarah had left, but from the wounds I had inflicted on myself by not trusting my own instincts. That was when the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something about it caught my attention. I hesitated for only a moment before answering. Hello. Hey John. It's Mike, the voice on the other end said. Mike. I hadn't heard from him in a while. He had been one of my closest friends, someone I had leaned on during the roughest patches of my marriage, but we had both gotten busy, and our time together had become scarce. Mike. How's it going, man? I said, leaning against the counter. It's going well, he replied. Listen, I wanted to check in with you. I know it's been a while since we hung out, but I've been thinking. I'm having a bit of a get-together this Saturday. A few people from the hiking group, some of the regulars, maybe even Emma. Just a low-key hangout at my place. I'd love for you to come. I felt a bit of hesitation. A get-together. A social event. It was one of those things I hadn't been sure I was ready for yet. But Mike's voice was warm, inviting, and he sounded like he really wanted me to be there. You know what, Mike? I said after a brief pause. I think I'll make it. I could use a good time with friends. Great. It's going to be good. Don't overthink it, man. Just come and relax. I agreed, and after hanging up, I stood there for a few moments, contemplating the invitation. It wasn't just another casual event. It was a chance for me to continue embracing my new life, to get out of my own head and just be present. Mike was right, there was no reason to overthink it. I had come so far in my journey of healing, and now it was time to take another step forward. Saturday evening came quickly, and I found myself standing in front of Mike's door, a bottle of wine in hand. As I rang the doorbell, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. It wasn't the same as hiding behind a facade of a perfect marriage or pretending to be someone I wasn't. This was me, raw and real, walking into a space where I didn't know everyone and where the future wasn't mapped out. But somehow that made me feel alive. Mike opened the door with a grin and clapped me on the back. Glad you made it, John. Come on in. Inside, the house was warm and lively, filled with the sounds of casual conversation and laughter. The familiar faces of the hiking group were there, along with a few new people I didn't recognize. Emma was standing by the kitchen counter, talking to one of the other guests. When she saw me, she smiled and waved me over. Hey John. Glad you made it, she said, her voice bright with genuine warmth. I couldn't resist, I replied, smiling back. This is the first time I've gotten out in a while, so thank you for the invite. Of course, Emma said, her eyes meeting mine with a soft, knowing look. I think you needed this. The evening flowed easily. I chatted with Mike's friends, learned a few things about hiking, and even shared some stories about the coffee shop. It was simple, easy, and most of all, it felt natural. For the first time in a while, I wasn't weighed down by the past. I wasn't thinking about Sarah or what had happened. I was just in the moment and it felt freeing. At some point during the evening, Emma pulled me aside as if she could sense I was deep in thought. John, can I ask you something? Sure, I said, following her to the quieter side of the room. Do you ever think about what comes next for you? I mean, after everything that happened with Sarah? I don't mean to rush you, but I see how far you've come, and I wonder if you're ready to let someone in again. I'm not saying it has to be me or anything, but are you open to it? I looked at her, surprised by the honesty in her eyes. She was right though. I had been so focused on rebuilding myself that I hadn't really given thought to the possibility of a future with someone else. I wasn't ready to make any big decisions, but the thought of it didn't terrify me like it once would have. I felt open. Open to whatever the future held. I'm not sure, I replied honestly, my voice calm. I've come a long way, but I'm still figuring it out. I'm not in a rush, but I'm open to seeing what happens. Emma nodded, a gentle smile curving on her lips. That's all anyone can ask for, right? Yeah, I said with a smile of my own. Yeah, I think so. The rest of the night passed in a blur of good food, easy conversations, and laughter. As the evening drew to a close and I said my goodbyes, I felt something I hadn't expected, a sense of peace. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't holding on to the past. I wasn't worried about what the future might bring. I was just living. And that was enough. The next few weeks felt like they were passing by faster than I could keep up with. The mornings were filled with the comforting rhythm of the coffee shop, the afternoons were spent in quiet moments of reflection, and the evenings, well, they were different now. Emma had become a steady presence in my life. We continued to spend time together, but there was no rush, no pressure to define anything. She respected the pace I needed, and I appreciated that. It felt like we were simply enjoying each other's company, without the weight of expectations. And for me, that was everything. The idea of being in a relationship again hadn't seemed possible not too long ago. After everything that had happened with Sarah, I wasn't sure I could trust anyone fully. My heart had been so broken, so battered, that I wondered if I would ever be able to truly open up again. But with Emma it was different. It wasn't about filling the space Sarah had left. It was about something new, something fresh that felt right in its own time. As for the coffee shop, it had become more than just a job, it was my anchor. It was the place where I could feel grounded, where I could connect with people and find small moments of joy in the chaos. I realized just how much I had built it into a part of my identity. And in a way it was the place where I had started to rebuild my life, one cup of coffee at a time. But even with all of this, there was a part of me that still wondered what my future held. Could I really move on from the person I had been? Could I truly embrace all that was waiting for me? I didn't have all the answers, and for the first time in my life I was okay with that. I was learning to embrace the uncertainty, the not knowing, and to trust that the path would reveal itself as I kept moving forward. One evening, after another long day at the shop, I found myself at home, sitting on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone. A message from Mike popped up. "Hey man, how's everything? I know it's been a minute since we caught up, but I wanted to let you know that the hiking group is planning a weekend trip in a few weeks. You should come. Just a couple of days out of town, some good trails and a lot of fresh air. I think it'll be good for you." I paused. A weekend trip? Sounded great. Escape the routine, breathe in some fresh air, get a change of scenery. I hadn't done anything like that in ages. But even as the thought lingered in my mind, I hesitated. Was I ready for something like that? Would it be too much? Before I could overthink it, I typed a quick reply, "Count me in. I could use the break." The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation for the trip. Packing, arranging time off from the coffee shop, and trying not to let my nerves get the best of me. It had been so long since I had allowed myself to step away from my comfort zone like this. But I knew it was exactly what I needed, an opportunity to reconnect with nature, with myself, and to test how far I had come in my journey of healing. The day of the trip, I found myself standing in front of my apartment with a backpack slung over my shoulder. I was excited, but there was a flutter of nerves in my stomach. What if the trip wasn't as easy as I thought? What if I felt disconnected, out of place? But as the car pulled up to pick me up, I shoved those thoughts aside. This was a new chapter, a new experience, and I was determined to embrace it. The drive to the trailhead was long, but filled with good conversation. Mike and a few other people from the hiking group had joined me, and they made the trip enjoyable with stories of past adventures, jokes, and plans for the weekend. As we got closer to our destination, the city's sounds faded away, replaced by the peaceful hum of nature. It was a welcome change. When we finally arrived, I was taken aback by the sheer beauty of the place. The mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks still dusted with snow despite the season. The air was crisp and clean, and the forest around us smelled like pine and earth. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel isolating, it felt peaceful. We spent the first day exploring the lower trails, stopping at scenic overlooks and taking photos along the way. I felt myself begin to relax, to let go of the worries that had been lingering in my mind. It was like the mountains were reminding me that there was more to life than the past, and that, as big as everything had seemed in the past, the world was still full of beauty and possibility. That evening, as the group gathered around the campfire, I found myself deep in conversation with one of the other hikers, a woman named Laura who had a calm and introspective energy about her. We talked about everything and nothing, life, love, the things that make us who we are. It wasn't anything profound, but it was a reminder that sometimes, it's the small, shared moments that make a difference. I realized in that moment how much I had been holding on to. For so long, I had been afraid to step out of my comfort zone, to meet new people, and to explore the world beyond the confines of my own fears and insecurities. But now, surrounded by the mountains and the stars, I felt like I was beginning to understand that life wasn't about waiting for everything to be perfect. It was about taking chances, embracing the unknown, and allowing myself to be vulnerable in the process. As I sat by the fire, the warmth of the flames lighting up the night, I thought about how far I had come. A year ago, I was in the depths of heartbreak, unsure of who I was and where I was going. Now, I was here, in the mountains, surrounded by people who cared, experiencing the beauty of the world. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't whole. But I was getting there. And that was enough. That night, as I lay in my tent under a sky full of stars, I made a promise to myself. I would continue to embrace the journey, wherever it might take me. I had no idea what the future held, but I was no longer afraid to face it. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. The days spent hiking through the mountains felt like a reset button for my soul. Each step on the trail, each breath of fresh, cool air seemed to cleanse me of the weight I had been carrying for so long. The landscape around us was wild and untamed, and in that chaos, I found a strange sense of peace. There was something about the vastness of the mountains that made me feel small in the best way possible, reminding me that I wasn't the center of the universe and that my struggles, though real, were just a part of the larger picture. The hiking group became more than just a group of people I was spending a weekend with. They became a reminder that there was life beyond the walls I had built for myself. Mike's jokes, Laura's thoughtful conversations, and even the quiet moments when we were all just walking together in silence. Each piece added something new to my understanding of connection. I realized that I didn't have to be afraid of new relationships, new experiences. I didn't have to stay locked in the past. By the time the trip was coming to a close, I felt a new sense of clarity. The old John, who was scared, who was bitter and lost, had made peace with his past. But the new John was beginning to emerge. He was open. He was unafraid of the future, even though he didn't know what it would look like. The past had shaped him, yes, but it no longer defined him. On our last night, as we gathered around the campfire, I looked around at the people who had become a part of my life over the past few days. We had all come from different backgrounds, different places in life, but here we were, together, sharing this moment. I had been so consumed by my own story for so long that I had forgotten how powerful it was to simply be present with others. "I'm really glad I came on this trip," I said, breaking the comfortable silence. The crackling of the fire was the only sound that accompanied my words. I didn't realize how much I needed something like this. Mike looked over at me, a knowing smile on his face. "Sometimes, man, you just need to step outside your comfort zone to realize how much you're missing." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. This trip had been about more than just hiking. It had been about embracing the unknown, trusting in the process, and realizing that there was still so much left to experience. Laura, who had been quietly sipping her drink, looked up from the fire. "It's kind of amazing, isn't it? How much we hold on to, and how much we can let go of when we let ourselves just be." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time fighting against my pain, my past, trying to hold on to control. But here, in the wildness of nature, I had learned the value of surrender. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to growth. I didn't need to hold on to the hurt anymore. I didn't need to fight every moment. That night, after the fire had died down and the stars were hanging low in the sky, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Hope for what the future could bring, even though I didn't know exactly what that future would look like. The next morning we packed up and began our journey back home. The drive felt different, less rushed, less filled with expectation. It was as if the trip had given me the time and space I needed to truly reflect on everything that had happened. I had no illusions about the road ahead. There would be more challenges, more hard days, and there might even be moments where I doubted myself again. But now I felt ready for it. I was no longer afraid of what was coming. As the car made its way back to the city, I found myself looking out the window, feeling a quiet peace settle in my chest. The city, with all its noise and busyness, no longer felt overwhelming. I was ready to return to it, to continue building my life, step by step, with the confidence that I had learned along the way. Back at the coffee shop, things began to feel more familiar. I fell back into the rhythm of the work I loved, but now there was a new energy in me. Every morning, as I brewed the first pot of coffee, I felt like I was doing more than just running a business. I was living my life with purpose again, making space for the things I loved, and allowing myself to open up to new experiences. Emma had continued to be a part of my life, but there was no rush between us. We spent more time together, getting to know one another without the pressure of expectations. We were both in the process of figuring out what we wanted, not just from each other but from our own lives. It was refreshing. It felt like two people choosing to share a moment in time, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. One evening, as I closed up the shop and stepped out into the cool night air, I saw Emma waiting by the door. She smiled at me as I approached. "I was thinking about grabbing dinner," she said casually, but her eyes held a warmth that made my chest feel a little lighter. "Sounds good," I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. "Where to?" "I thought we'd figure it out on the way," she said. "You've got a lot to catch up on and I've got some new ideas. What do you think?" I chuckled, feeling a bit of excitement stir within me. "I think that sounds perfect." And just like that, we walked off into the night. No plans. No expectations. Just the promise of a quiet evening ahead, shared between two people who were ready to enjoy whatever came next. As we walked, I realized something important. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where my future was headed, and that was okay. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to control it all. I was letting life unfold, trusting that the steps I was taking were leading me in the right direction. And that was enough.